Hello, fellow Murdlers. Today is Monday, April 15th, 2024, and it's a great day to solve a murder. Today we have the murder at the spooky castle, and we have three 4x4 grids with suspects, locations, and weapons. We do have a red murder clue today. The murder took place too close to an alligator, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be looking at a location, but let's try to figure that out as we go through our suspects, weapons, and locations. So starting with suspects, today we have Officer Copper, Uncle Midnight, Chancellor Tuscany, and Senor Emerald. Our weapons today are a crazed squirrel, a poisoned goblet, an ancient plague, and a ghost detector. I'm very worried I'm going to say ghost projector because that's a common item that we see here. And our locations today are a secret chamber, the spooky woods, the dungeon, and the moat. Now, I do see this crocodile or alligator thing here. Okay, yes, filled with alligators and crocodiles and bullets. Don't fall into the moat. I'm sure that's good advice, especially because that is our murder location today. So the murder took place at the moat, and we can use our clues and evidence and our detective's notebook to figure out who was there and what weapon they had. So let's go ahead and dive in. A black hair was found wrapped around the ghost detector. Okay, so let's look through. We've got blonde hair, brown hair, gray hair, and black hair. Okay, Senor Emerald then must have had the ghost detector. We'll mark that in. A splash of wine was found outdoors. I think... Yes, for the poison goblet, look for a splash of wine left behind. Now, I know this item looks like a trophy, but I think it is meant to be more like a typical like chalice goblet kind of thing. So that's kind of what tipped me off there. So splash of wine left behind, and that was found outdoors. So let's check out our locations. We've got indoors, outdoors, indoors, outdoors. Okay, so we know that the goblet could not have been in the secret chamber or the dungeon, and we know that it must have been either in the spooky woods or the moat. So it could possibly be our murder weapon today. But unfortunately, that's all we know for now, and we'll have to figure out the rest as we go along. Okay, next we have an anagram puzzle. This one is Chancellor Tuscany had a crazed squirrel. So that QU association, I don't think exists for any of the other things. So that's what kind of gives that one away. So Chancellor Tuscany had a crazed squirrel. So Chancellor Tuscany, crazed squirrel. All right. Senor Emerald had not been in the dungeon. Okay, so if Senor Emerald had not been in the dungeon, we can mark that in here. It means we can also mark off the dungeon as a possible location for the ghost detector, because that would force Senor Emerald into the dungeon. Of course, he was not there. Officer Copper was seen hanging around beneath a twisted tree. Okay. So I believe the twisted tree is the spooky woods. Yes, twisted trees. So Officer Copper in the spooky woods, mark that off. Okay, now this also tells us that the crazed squirrel and the ghost detector were both not in the spooky woods, because that's Officer Copper's location, and those weapons are assigned to other people. Okay, and Aries had the ancient plague. So let's look through and see. Officer Copper might be the Aries we're talking about, and Officer Copper is the Aries we're talking about. Okay, so Officer Copper had the ancient plague in the spooky woods. Now this also means that we have discovered Uncle Midnight's weapon was a poisoned goblet, and it means that we have shown that the poisoned goblet must have been in the moat, because the ancient plague was in the spooky woods with Officer Copper, and that was the only other outdoor location other than the moat, which we know is a requirement for the goblet. So we do have our murderer today. We have Uncle Midnight with a poisoned goblet at the moat. So I'll go ahead and flip these over, but before I check to see if we were right, I'm just going to take a moment and fill in my grid. All right, there's our grid all filled out. Everything's looking good to me. So let's go ahead and see if we were right. All right, we were right. Thanks so much for playing along with me today. I hope this was a helpful walkthrough, and we'll see you tomorrow.